Yay!
I think we're live.
We're live. It says live.
I've done live shows, but this is only the second time I've hosted it, and it's very stressful. I have to control it. I can't just be like, well, this isn't my problem. Someone else will deal with it.
Well, hello, internet. It's your channel, Leanna. You're hosting.
Oh yeah. See, again, I'm like, someone else will introduce this. I'll just wait for my turn to talk. Yeah, this is my channel. I assume y'all know that because you're on it. And this is Amanda, who is my fellow channel haver.
That's accurate. Yeah.
We have kind of accidentally formed a book club that Amanda has aptly named book. Nope, that's not what it's called.
Blades and Bodice Rippers book club. Well, you came to me and you're like, hey, let's read this book. And then maybe we could read a book together every month. And I was like, down, let's do it. And then it came time to make the thumbnail and both of us hadn't named it. So I was like, Blades and Bodice Rippers book club.
And yeah, if we had voted, if all two of us had voted, I would have voted for that.
I remember I sent you the thumbnail. I sent you the thumbnail and I was like, oh yeah, I named our book club.
Book club unanimously decided that this should be the name.
I just kind of hope you like it. That's what it is.
It's accurate, which is, one of the best features of it. Okay, but so today, we're doing the books that I pick on my channel, and we're doing the books Amanda picks on her channel. And I picked, so I brought this upon myself, Kings of the Wyld, as y'all know, because it was in the thumbnail. Yeah, so...
let's just put the elephant out of the room in the beginning that we had vastly different opinions on the book. Yep. I kind of liked it, and I know you did not like it.
I hated it so much. So when I finished it, I rewarded myself for finishing it by pouring myself a very stiff and large drink, putting on Greta Van Fleet, and then reading 1-star reviews so I could find my tribe and be like, yes.
No, I liked the book. I gave it 4 stars because there is criticism to be had. It's not perfect, but overall, I noticed the criticism. It just didn't necessarily bother me as much because it was still kind of fun. It's just basically okay, here's the gist of the book. Picture Motley Crue if they were fantasy adventurers. Ta-da. But Motley Crue today. They had a crazy youth. They went bananas, and now they're older dudes, but they're one final ride. Let's do it.
So I feel like it's billed and promoted and talked about as grimdark fantasy for lovers of This Is Spinal Tap.
Oh, I wouldn't say it's grimdark.
But it is on grimdark lists.
But it's not. Oh, see,
thank you.
I didn't know that because it's not grimdark. I wouldn't say that. We were texting when we were reading it, and didn't I say, I'm yeah, it's less good Abercrombie. I said that to you.
Right, and it is compared to Abercrombie. It's Abercrombie meets This Is Spinal Tap, and I'm just oh, fuck you. No, I like both of those things a great deal. How dare you?
I get the comparison, but it's not as good as either if you use those two as your rubric. It makes it not good because it's not as good at either of those things, but it's good in its own right.
Disagree. Okay, but I think
I have so many drinks. Sorry, I was
I have a water bottle and coffee, but I'm too angry to pause and drink. Okay, hold on.
I'm having a VNA. Usually I drink red, but I'm having white today, so I feel fancy.
I feel like we should be having beers because of the book that we read. That seems like a more appropriate beverage. A mead
or a grog.
It should be natty.
Rule. What is it? Oh. I don't care even if it goes with the book. I will not drink a natty. I'm not going to drink a natty ice or light.
Enjoy a natty as much as I enjoyed this book. Okay, so for me, so I think the humor just does not work for me. This author's humor is not my cup of tea. But that aside, so assuming that irrelevant humor is a matter of taste, but I think whether I liked his humor or not, what still didn't work for me is that the book didn't seem to really know if it wanted to be like a completely down the line comedy or to be like a serious book that has a lot of comedy in it, because it was just like mainly comedy. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there'd be like these emotional moments that were not built up and were not like, there was no groundwork for it. And all of a sudden these characters would be like emotional, like for serious. And I was like, what? Am I supposed to feel something for this? Because like these characters have like no character depth. Like I feel nothing right now. And so like, are you telling me I'm supposed to actually take these characters seriously? Because so far they have been nothing but caricatures with like fart jokes and dick jokes. And now they're like, but I'm crying over my daughter. And I'm like, okay.
I didn't have that problem. I thought like the humor, like, okay, like, is it a bit juvenile at points? Yes. Like, there's, you know, but then again, like, I wouldn't think really sophisticated humor would work for the characters, because these aren't guys who made a name for themselves by thinking thoughts. They made a name for themselves by swinging swords. They're not going to be very sophisticated in how they like see the world and their jokes. So like it made sense for the characters. I had a couple of funny lines though, like when they went to go get Moog the wizard, and they're like, well, if you leave a wizard on his own for too long, he's just going to go crazy. And like, I forget the exact line, but they said it better than that. And I kind of laughed. I thought that was clever. But
at first I liked Moog. Like at the very, very first, I was like, he's kind of funny and quirky, but it got old real fast. His like antics, and he was just like Mr. Exposition. Like whenever they just like wanted to pause a chapter to be like, well, there's this magical thing that like now will fix our situation, and here's this MacGuffin that I know about, and let me just tell you about this world thing. And just like he was Mr. Encyclopedia who doesn't wear pants sometimes, and I was just like, okay.
Well, he's a wizard, you know. Yeah, I agree. He was a bit repetitive of his character. Not all the characters were as fully fleshed out, but I overall thought, I don't know, I just kind of like, I didn't take it very seriously. And I think that might be the difference here. I was just kind of like, yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be. I wasn't taking it too seriously, so it didn't like bother me.
And like, okay, so to your point that like they're not exactly sophisticated men, so like they wouldn't have highbrow humor, and I agree. Mm-hmm. However, Logan Ninefingers is hardly a thinker, hardly an educated man, but his like thoughts and internal monologue and the portrayal of that character, like I was picturing like basically, yeah, like this would be a slightly more on the humorous, less serious side of like a bunch of Logan Ninefingers on a quest.
Yeah, but I don't think the Logan Ninefingers is supposed to be a comedic character.
Right, so I'm saying, but like he does have funny moments, and like his approach to life is kind of just like man who swings a sword, and like occasionally like
he's very practical, and I think the humor is not anything he's doing, it's just situational. It's just like, yeah, I'm very practical and this situation is stupid.
Yeah, so like I was picturing Kings of the Wild to be like,
he's a straight man in that situation.
Yeah, but I mean the Northmen in general, like there's some funny moments with the Northmen because like their personalities clash. So
sorry, we're talking about other books. We're talking about Kings of the Wild.
Everything always comes back to Abercrombie. If you're on my channel and you haven't figured that out yet. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what to say except that I hate it. Okay, well, also women.
Okay, it was a bit male gazy.
A bit.
I'm being nice. It's very male gazy. I agree.
The description of the Gorgon's breasts.
Your melon boobs.
I was like, are you fucking joking right now?
Good old melon boobs.
Which is then followed by one of the band members being like, I know the whole Gorgons turning men to stone isn't true, but I'm hard as a rock.
I know. But like that's like a joke I expect them to make. So it wouldn't bother me. Because he's like
by then, yeah, I wasn't exactly
Matrick is the Tommy Lee of that group, though. Like Tommy Lee would make that joke.
Oh, and okay, so like I knew that the premise is that like we're taking the idea of like what if like it was like an old rock band that's like coming back together for one final tour, but mercenaries. And I was like,
yeah.
But then like it was so like overtly on the nose doing that. Like I thought it would be subtler about nodding to like that's the concept here, as opposed to like saying things that are like literally references to like like the lead singer and the guitarist kind of situation.
Yeah, they could never keep a bard.
Yeah, I was like, you're like, it's not like, I expected it to be where like you could compare it to that as the situation and dynamic rather than it's literally that. Like even the names of the bands and the arena, and I was just like,
yeah, it's a little on the nose. I agree, but again, that didn't bother me. I was just like, yeah, it's fun. You know, I was having a good time with it.
And I think I would have been able to forgive a lot of that if like the humor, if like the jokes like made me laugh. Like if I did think it was funny, I'd be like, okay, it's not actually that good a book, but like it is funny. I just didn't think any of it was funny at all.
I'm chewing. I should have spoke instead of chewed, but toast.
Anyway, what are people saying in the comments?
I don't know. Maybe my chat isn't working. I don't see any comments yet. Oh wait, because I'm in the private chat. Oh, look at all those comments! I thought they weren't any.
You're like, no one cares.
No one cares about us. I was in the wrong like section.
So like, what jokes worked for you? I'm curious.
I like the wizard joke. I liked Clay's humor. I think he had the best humor because he's like the closest I would say. Like if Logan Ninefingers settled down, not like he did in Red Country, but like more like suburban. Like if Logan Ninefingers moved to the suburbs, like he would be Clay. I think. I feel like they're kind of similar characters. So I really liked Clay and I liked his humor because he's the one who said that wizard line. He's like, well, if you leave any wizard alone long enough, he's going to get into some weird stuff. Like just kind of his like remarks on things are kind of funny. I can't remember him. I didn't mark the pages, but like he had some like funny ones.
Store brand Logan Ninefingers.
He's kind of generic. I would say he's, Kirkland brand Logan Ninefingers.
Kirkland brand. It's really good stuff.
True. But I liked Clay, so I'm giving him Kirkland. Bite me.
But and then okay, so like in addition to the on the nose references to a rock band, also the on the nose like references to sayings, like when there's like the what happens in blank stays in blank, or like the straw that broke the camel's back, like literal phrases like that, where I was just like, that's not funny or clever.
It didn't bother me. I think your criticisms are valid. I think it just depends on whether or not like you're bothered by that, or if you're just like, yeah, this is kind of fun. I'm having a good time, And I was just kind of laid back about it, so I didn't go in like expecting a lot. I was just like, yeah, it's good. It's gonna be fun. I had a good time. You started it way before me, and I finished it first. Like I was having a good time with it, and you were just like, cursing it.
I mean, it also like I think I said it in my vlog that like I noticed now after having realized I hate it that it's blurbed by two authors who I also hate.
Oh well, that would be a giveaway, I guess. Who's it blurred by? I know none of these authors, so I didn't come in with like.
Gwyn wrote Malice, which I did a rant review for.
Oh,
and
that one?
Yeah. And Sebastian de Castell wrote Traitor's Blade, which I have a rant review for.
I see.
Yep. And like actually like when I saw them blurb it, I was like, a lot of my issues with Malice and Traitor's Blade are present in Kings of the Wild, like specifically. Like treatment of women, really like
that's national
characters. Like oh my god. And like I wasn't okay, so there's like the obvious like where you can obviously be pissed off at like the description of the Gorgon's boobs, and like later how like what's her name, who goes by Sabatha sometimes, is like her power is basically being hot. I'm like, okay. But also the fact that Clay's wife, like while they're on their quest, he keeps thinking of her as like the woman that saved him, that saw the good in him. And that's like already like very stereotypical. But also in the beginning, when you saw them together, it was all this like super cringy stereotypical, like, oh, my wife will be mad when she finds out I had a beer, and like better not criticize her cooking because she's gonna be like shrewish about it. And like it was that. And then the whole quest, he's just like, my wife, how I miss her so much. Oh, you mean the one that you were just like, oh god, like she's gonna yell at me when I don't like her soup. Like what?
That's why I did not give this 5 stars. I mean, I had fun with it. I didn't take it very seriously. I had fun. But there is something to be said about the male gaze aspect of this book because, I mean, they didn't do great. Like Jane and the Silk Arrows were okay. Like I didn't mind them. That's kind of where the female characters ended. And mind you, only Jane spoke. Like none of the Silk Arrows really had a line to say. I kind of liked Jane though. In general, I thought she was like the best female character in the book because all of them are relegated to very much side characters. Like, okay, Larkspur, aka Sabbatha, who is a mercenary and is on the journey with the guys for quite a long time due to amnesia because she was trying to kill them and then she hits her head and she's like, oh, I'm nice now. And she's on this like,
let's hope the amnesia sticks.
Yeah, she's on this quest with them the whole time. And again, her superpower is just like, oh, I'm hot. I get it. But the other side of the coin is she was so little, there was so little put into her character that you could remove her from the story entirely and it wouldn't make a difference.
Okay, but so like
why was she there?
There were so many chapters like that, regardless of women, that you could take it out and it would make zero difference because they had no purpose to the plot. Like, and oh my God, this annoyed me so much throughout. And I was like, I didn't realize it until I realized it. And I was like, yeah, that's what's missing. Is that like, I get that it's a comedy, but this whole, they're going there to save Rose. And I never felt a sense of urgency, not even from her own father. It wasn't never this just
their time.
Up, guys, like we need to get this MacGuffin already because my daughter. It was all just like, well, let's stop at the next place to get the next MacGuffin that doesn't really move the plot forward. And I'm like, are we not on a schedule here? Like,
there is a lot of side plots that don't necessarily add to the main story arc of the story. Like the story arc is like, we're getting the band back together so we could save Gabe's daughter. That's the arc. Then they have all these like side plots, like the rot and Moog trying to cure it. And I think those things existed just to give the characters some like emotional depth. And that's why they're in there. Well, like Moog and like him feeling sad about his husband because he's like the one person he really wanted to save and he wasn't able to. And then he finds the cure after his husband's already dead. Like that's like sad. I feel like
I should haven't wanted to care about, but because of the care, like the whole time he was such a caricature that like when you like actually have a moment of depth with him, I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't care about this character. Like you made him entirely a joke. So like, I don't give a shit that he is sad right now. I'm sorry, I don't. And then,
okay. I know people who are remarkably like Moog. Like I don't like hang out with them now, but like in my like youth, I hang out with like a lot of musicians. I know so many Moogs. Like, so that character felt kind of real to me. I'm like, yeah, I know that guy. That's David. Like, I know that guy in real life. So
but there was just like also like,
real.
There are moments where like, again, like a person, just because a person doesn't have depth, the way that you write them has to have depth, if that makes sense. Because like that person, even if they themselves cannot articulate the emotions they're experiencing because they're not like edified enough or whatever, you can still pick up on the depth of the emotions they're feeling if the author tells it well. And so like for that random scene where like they decide that they're going to let what's his name see his daughter in the magic globe, and his reaction when he sees like the like horrible place that she is in is to literally break the thing and no one tries to stop him. And then they just like go about their quest. And it was like so disproportionate, out of nowhere, and literally not how someone would react, that I laughed. Like there was one point in this book that I laughed, and that was it. And you're not supposed to laugh at that.
Okay. I didn't mind it. I wasn't bothered by as many things. I was just kind of like, yeah, you know, it's gonna be fun. Like I was very much kind of laissez-faire about the story. Like there is criticism, but like that part didn't bother me. Because, like, I get thinking of them as Motley Crue, and, like, Motley Crue would break shit on the reg. Like, they would throw TVs out windows. Like, breaking shit isn't new. So I can see, like, damn it, I hate this thing. Bah, let's destroy it. Like, that would be, like, a totally normal reaction from Motley Crue. So I just kind of kept thinking of them as if they were an 80s hair metal band. And then, like, a lot of the behavior makes a lot more sense. And then, like, therefore, like, it didn't bother me as much. Because I'm like, yeah, they
But,
would
like,
fucking do that.
the fact that one of them, like, there would be a person that could do that, yeah, but, like, the way Gabe had been portrayed throughout was not the kind of person to do that. So then when all of a sudden he did it, it was just like, what?
I think Gabe now is different than Gabe was when he was young, because he was like golden Gabe. He was a front man when he was young, so he would have done some shit in his
All
youth.
times that they kept saying, like, either they, the band, or somebody who recognized them would say, "Oh yeah, remember that time when?" And they would like describe in 2 lines some like previous adventure, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to read about that. That sounds way more interesting than this."
This is just kind of like, you know, they're middle aged and they're just like, well, we're kind of washed up, but maybe we got one more trick up our sleeve.
And I honestly feel like that as a concept. That's why I picked or wanted to pick this up, because I think like that is a good concept, and I think it could work really, really well. And I think if you had like, you could have such dark but really funny humor about like men coming to terms with their own mortality and like having basically a midlife crisis in a fantasy setting, and have them all have like immense kind of PTSD, but them also being like too macho to admit it. And like there's so much, like so many layers you could actually have going on with their dynamics. And I was like, that's such a rich concept, like their previous dynamics, their previous relationships, their previous baggage, and like now being old and like having to come to terms with the fact that they can't actually physically do the things that they once did. And like that could be so good. And they were all just like cardboard cutouts from like 80s rock stars. And I was just like,
Yeah.
why? This could have been so good.
I agree. And I didn't think the book was perfect. I just thought it was fun. There's a difference between like good literature and fun literature. So I had fun with this book. However, I think that goes back into the whole issue of the male gaze and how these characters are being presented. Because these characters are supposed to be like ballsy. Like they are big swinging cocks of people. Okay. Like I don't think they're trying to be too emotionally invested here. They want them to be like, yeah, you know, you were really badass in your youth and you got one more trick left up your sleeve. It's more about just proving your masculinity and proving that you still have, you know, this old dog has a couple more tricks, more so than emotional depth and like PTSD. Like they talked about that briefly once with Clay, that he still has like these horrible nightmares of when they were in the Heartwild and he wakes up like just sweating. So they talked about it very briefly, but like that, I don't know, it wasn't like the point of the story. The point of the story was very much just like, yeah, let's just all whip them out and swing them about. Like it was just very much a pop rock song.
I still wouldn't have thought it was funny, but I could have accepted that this book is just trying to be that, just trying to be like a comedy with no depth, if it didn't also occasionally do that, where it would have these moments where you're like, I still have like nightmares from that, and like you know, like having those like very brief moments where you're like, are we trying to be deep for a second? Nope, just kidding. Someone's whipped his dick out now. Okie dokie. But like, because they did that, I was just like, is it not just a straight comedy? Because like, am I supposed to feel actual depth for these characters? Because you're not earning that at all.
But I mean, even in comedies, they have moments of like
good comedies.
In comedy in general, whether it's good or not, it's kind of to the eye of the beholder. But they still have moments of emotional depth because you need that contrast in storytelling. If it's just like joke, 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 it's going to be just exhausting. You need those quiet, slow moments for those jokes to pop. So I felt like it needed those like little bits of like emotion. So like, I don't think these guys are complete idiots. Like they're idiots, but not complete idiots. You know what I mean?
No, because they're complete idiots. Oh man, I was so frustrated the whole time because I kept thinking again, like to myself, like how it could have been good. I just kept thinking, I was like, okay, so here you could have done a thing. Here you could have had a moment, and it would have been funnier and it would have been sadder, and I would have felt so many more positive and negative feelings at the same time. Like it could have been so good. Why? I also don't, because okay, so the male gaziness of it, which is obviously the one point that we actually agree on.
Oh yeah. No, it depends on how much it bothers you.
But it's also shocking to me that this was written in 2017. The male gaziness reads to me like something from like the 90s when like people were like more okay with it. This was written very recently. And I'm like, what? Excuse me?
Almost broke my wine. No, I don't know. It's just, it has a lot of problems. You're correct. I don't disagree with you. It's just a matter of not whether or not it bothers you. And I think we've had this same conversation about other books that you're just like, I am irrationally angry and I want to destroy this book with fire. And I'm just like, yeah, you know, it had some problems. I'm just like not as bothered. And you're just like, how are you not bothered? And I'm like, oh.
I think conversely, we have also had situations where like I really like a book and you're just like,
yeah. But then I don't know. It's our Venn diagram. We have the juicy middle where we agree, and then we have like the things we're just like. We both read Dread Nation too in July, and we both loved it.
Our buddy pick.
I mean, we could just talk about that for a bit, but we both loved Dread Nation.
So like I started reading Dread Nation, and I'm not like completely swapping to that now, but like as a counterpoint, because like I started reading on the July 4th, but I barely read any of it. And then like because I was on my Kindle, I kept forgetting I had it. So like right around the time I was like gonna knuckle down and read Kings of the Wyld before this live show, I was like, oh yeah, I have Dread Nation that I started. I should finish that. And I finished it before, like I had read 100 pages, I think, of Kings. And then stopped and read like all of Dread Nation, and then went back to Kings of the Wyld, and I was just like,
yeah,
like Dread Nation was funny and gritty, and it had like so much punch, like in all directions. Again, like it had me laughing and crying, and it was like so good. And then I read Kings of the Wyld, and I was like, this is an adult book, has zero depth. Okay.
No, I agree. I'm like, that's a bad idea. You already didn't like this book, and then you just read a better book in the middle of it, and you had to go back to the book you hate. Like, I understand why you hated it with a passion. Like after Dread Nation in the middle of it, you're going back to something that's not as good, and you're just like, fuck. So like, I get it for that. That I think you did yourself a disservice with that one.
Yeah, like it definitely didn't help. I mean, I don't think there's any scenario in which I would not have hated this book, but I hated it extra.
I don't know. Like for me, like yes, it has definite issues. Like we talked about the male gaziness, which I think is pretty much the biggest thing because that contributes to a lot of the other problems in the book. But
well, I think as a like not a direct result, but an indirect result of a male gazy type author is that like I feel like a lot of emotional depth in characters comes from a willingness to look at them as people rather than as a dude. You know what I mean? So like because they're not willing to delve into like some messier emotions because like, oh, that's girly, then you didn't get that depth from any of the characters because it's all just like dudes being dudely and that girl has boobs, lol, I have a heart on. Like, fuck.
That's kind of accurate though. But you know, I think that's where the detriment of the book comes in. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4 because like I genuinely had fun with it. Like I thought it was a fun read. I didn't like take it very seriously. But does it have problems? Yes. Like it's not going to be my like best books of the year. But like I don't know. I may be a little interested to read like the Rose's book, but not really because I'm like I don't know how he's gonna like handle a book with a female main character if this is how he had females in his first book.
I didn't even think about that, but like I was just like, oh god, I'm not reading the second one because this was
that
terrible.
Could be a shit show.
Oh no. Oh no. But I was just thinking too, is like I like a goofy comedy. Like I can like a goofy comedy, but this reminded me very specifically of a show that like I watched one episode of and I was just like, no. And I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it was basically like a medieval like tits and balls kind of comedy that was like I forget someone who I liked was in it. But it was like one of those like not another teen movie type humor where there's like
come out recently?
No, it was a while ago.
Oh, okay. Because Daniel Radcliffe did one like recently that was like
no, not that. This was like this came out when I was like I think in high school. But yeah, this had a very 90s vibe to it, honestly, this whole book, because like this kind of humor, this is what like teen comedies were like, where it was just like not another teen movie, where it's just like boobs and farts and like really just American Pie type humor.
I mean, the farts are always funny, so I can't like fault him for that. Yes.
Like the part at the beginning where like he accidentally sets off a miasma of boners and like that's how they like. That
was funny though. I remember telling you that and you're just like, who are you? We can't be friends anymore. No, okay. For the people who maybe haven't read it, I don't know why you'd be here if you haven't read the book. But there's a moment where they're going to go get Matrick, one of their old buddies from the band, to get him back in the band. And they all come through this mirror after Moog the wizard had set off this like boner bomb, because Moog has basically made his living curing erectile dysfunction because he's a wizard and that's all he can really do. And so he sets off this bomb because they're running from people, and they go through this mirror and they all show up in the room. But mind you, they all got a whiff of this like stuff that makes boners. So they're all like meeting up after all this time fighting, and they're all just like raging erections. And I thought it was kind of funny because it's just like the one thing I wouldn't expect to happen in that scene are raging erections.
Now, in that same scene is when you have like a perfect example of the like stupid, convenient plot devicey things where like the king that really needs to escape from there and has needed to escape this whole time forgot that the mirror on his own wall is a portal to get out of there. And he was like, oh yeah, forgot that was there.
But again, like he's Tommy Lee to me, so I'm just like, Tommy Lee would totally forget. I pictured them as Motley Crue in the book, like it's a little bit better because you're like, yeah, Motley Crue would totally fucking do that. No. By the way, I looked at the band lineup, and I remember I texted this to you because I kept picturing them as an actual band because I just imagined them as Motley Crue, and it made a lot more sense to me. But like, yeah, because Matrick, he's always carrying around these two swords like drumsticks, so he's Tommy Lee. There you go. He's the drummer. And then like you have Ganelon, who's just like a psychopath. And then you have Gabe, who are totally both guitarists. I think Ganelon would be like, he would have the crazy solos every once in a while. But like Gabe is just like the main guitarist who's like putting the melody through. And then you have Clay, who's totally a bassist. He's just kind of unassuming, keeping like the rhythm going. Totally works. And then you have Moog, who is a wizard and totally a keyboardist, because like wizards are always keyboardists. Like tell me they're not. Fight me. No. Like wizards always play keyboard. And then they can never keep a bard, so they can never keep a lead singer. So I don't know. I kept thinking of them as a band, and I think it helped my enjoyment because then it's kind of like sillier. I don't know. I wasn't taking it seriously.
That's actually a better example. I was trying to think of an example of like a silly comedy that's a straight comedy that I like. Spinal Tap. Like Spinal Tap is a dumb comedy and nobody is to be taken seriously, and I love the shit out of it.
So I think it's dumb, but it's highbrow dumb. Like it's not dumb enough. It's not American Pie. Like that's dumb. Well, I think it's a little better than American Pie. We can give it that. No one fucked a pie. So I think it's like Spinal Tap, I think is highbrow dumb, where it's like you have to have a certain level of intelligence to get the jokes and realize why they're dumb.
I guess that's what I expected from this book, though. I was expecting it to be meta comedy, where it's just like, if you understand like the subtle nods to a band, then like this is a funny grimdark fantasy that like has this fun like meta joke that you might pick up on of it kind of being like a band, but instead,
yeah, it was a bit much. Like the whole thing is very much like, get it? They're a band. Like it's very much a little over the top, but then I didn't mind it because I was kind of like having fun with the concept.
I was like, yes, I get it. I got it. I still get it. And I will always get it.
It was repetitive a bit, but like, I don't know. I just kind of thought it was fun. I didn't take it very seriously. So
there was my character. Okay, so this is stretching because like normally I wouldn't say this is like something I like, but out of anything in it, I was like, this is the only part that I was just like, it's kind of funny, was that guy with the two heads where one is blind and he keeps describing the world as really beautiful to his blind head. So that his blind head thinks everything is great. Like that joke got old really, really, really fast. But at first, that was kind of funny.
I didn't think it was a joke. I think that was more of the emotional depth scene.
Well, I feel like it was a joke in terms of like when he's doing it at first and he's just like, oh yes, we have gold and wonderful meals. And the band is like, the fuck we do. And then they get it. They're like, oh, he's saying it for his head. Like that was a joke. That they're just like, since when? And then like the fact that they're like going through a sewer, but like, you know, the head is like, oh, how lovely, because he doesn't really know. And like all the times he's like, oh, I wish I could see it. And they're like, yeah, you really don't wish you could see it because it doesn't look like
but I kind of like that though. I thought that was like one of the bits of emotional depth that worked in the story.
what I'm saying. Like, out of anything in it, that one kind of worked for me, both as a joke and as emotional depth, because I was like, that one has the layers I'm looking for, and like not nearly enough for it to be something that I really, really like. But that's like the first and only thing that was like kind of being more in line with what I would have expected, where you're like, you have those moments that are like, it's actually kind of truly sad that this is the situation, but there's some humor to be had in that sadness. And I expected the whole book to be that way, like these over the hill rockers, like that's it is inherently kind of a sad situation, but there's humor to be had in that sadness. But that is not what this book was.
I was just having fun. I felt like, you know, there would be like an all-star 80s hair metal band soundtrack and it would just be like silly. So I don't know. Like the criticisms you have, I don't disagree with. I think they're pretty valid. It's just like whether or not it bothers you. And for me, I'm just like,
you sound right now the way I sound when I talk about Riverdale. I'm like, yeah, you're right, but it's great.
You did try to explain like 3 seasons worth of like nonsense to me, and I was like, I'm going to scream into a pillow. Like, what are you talking about? There's a cult? Like,
by Chad Michael Murray.
Like, I actually like that though. I'm just like, yeah, bring back the old like heartthrobs from our like teenage years. Well, my teenage years. I think you're younger than me, so yeah, I could just feel old for a minute.
Okay, what are people saying?
Yeah, what are people saying?
I keep glancing and then like being distracted by my loathing.
Some people agree with me that it's just like, it's not great, but it's fun.
Yeah, I saw one that I was gonna put up because they agreed with you.
There's a couple people agree with me. I got some thoughts that are valid. This wine I drank it's very strong. And I was like, I don't want to be drunk at like 11 in the morning, but like it was very strong and I'm a little loosey-goosey. I'm having a good time. Like I just want to dance around.
Okay. That one. There you go. Agrees with you.
There's some people who agree. Like, you know, it's just like if you take it seriously, obviously there's gonna be like a lot of problems that are gonna compound upon each other. But if you're just like, yeah, you know, fuck it. You're just kind of like, whatever. Like, it's fun. So it just like depends on how relaxed you are while reading, I guess.
Okay, this is why I can't be hosting shows, because I don't understand how people participate in a conversation and also look for comments to highlight. This is too hard. I can't do this. I can't be in charge of this.
I can't highlight comments, sadly, because you're the host.
Oh, okay. Well, you can be the host next time. Well, you will be.
I will be the host next time. Well, we can talk about that. You look for comments, and I'll talk about next month. Okay.
While I was reading Kings of the Wyld, I was like, "Can I just skip ahead and read Amanda's pick for next month because I don't want to finish this."
Okay. So for next month, I know not all of you are into romances, the bodice ripper side of this club. Like, it's, you know what? We don't really necessarily have rules. I'm not only going to do romances, and Leanne is not only going to do fantasy. We're gonna read whatever the fuck we want to read. We're gonna read whatever we want to read. And for next month, I wanted to read this anyways, and I talked Leanna into reading it, which is Daring and the Duke by Sarah McLean. I have been waiting for this book for like a year. I'm very excited. It is the 3rd book of a series, but they can be read as standalones. And this features a very duplicitous Duke who has tried to kill his siblings. Step siblings, let's point that out. And then this woman who is a criminal mastermind who kind of runs the criminal underground of London, who is one of the wards that he grew up with, who he tried to have murdered. So it's not really a meet cute, but they have a definite past. So it's 2 kind of bad guy characters getting together. And I've been waiting for this book for a really long time, so I'm excited for it.
I feel like it's going to have all of the gritty emotional depth that Kings of the Wyld is missing.
Hopefully you'll like it. I mean, technically Beach Read was also your idea. So you picked the first 2 books.
Well, we got huge high highs and low lows. It's an emotional roller coaster.
And this one has a smutty tab. Let's get in there. Smutty tab.
Oh, baby. Honestly, the Kings of the Wyld would enjoy that.
Oh.
Oh, this is more in line with agreeing with me.
Yeah. No, like if you're gonna compare it to Abercrombie, even I said that when I was
everything to Abercrombie.
You can't compare everything. You can't compare this to Abercrombie.
No. Watch me.
You shouldn't. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Okay, you made me read the Duchess deal, and the first thing I did was compare it to Abercrombie.
Okay, well, you do you, honey. You do what works for you. But yeah, I was even texting that to you when I was reading. I'm like, yeah, it's like less good Abercrombie. Like if you came in expecting Abercrombie, you're gonna see the idea, but you're gonna see it done poorly. You're not gonna see it done as good as Abercrombie does it. So saying it's like Abercrombie meets Spinal Tap is doing a disservice to the book because it's not as good as either of those things.
Yes. I'm very, very disappointed.
It's not as good as either of those things, but I do see like what the reference.
Call it is 300 meets American Pie. That's more accurate.
I don't know about that. I don't want to compare anything to American Pie because, like, I can't stand it. Like,
that's how I feel. Kings of the Wild.
I know, but I feel like this. I would rather read Kings of the Wild than watch American Pie.
American Pie is shorter, so I would rather.
True, but I would still rather read the book than watch American Pie.
I am genuinely looking forward to your pick. I think there's a high probability that I will enjoy it for next.
It's going to be angsty though. It's going to have so much angst, and they're both kind of bad guy characters, so that's kind of fun.
We know I don't mind angst because
yeah,
Riverdale.
Like the first book, well, the first book of the series, it's very much kind of more typical historical romance. There's a woman who's kind of a spinster, but she's also really good at picking locks. And then her love interest is like a criminal who's like, you know how to pick locks? Sup? You know? So it's that kind of romance.
I'm assuming there's like a ton of double entendres regarding picking locks.
Surprisingly not, but
missed opportunity.
I would have been so bored. That's low-hanging fruit. But anyway, and then the book 2
that's
actually
the kind of jokes that Kings of the Wild tells all the time. Only low-hanging fruit. Only.
That's a Joe Abercrombie thing, though. Doesn't he call like all of men's genitals fruits?
I was just thinking that, and I was like, I won't say it because I brought up Abercrombie already enough.
That's why we're friends. We know when we're talking about dicks.
Oh my god. Like I was like, is there a joke in there somewhere that I can say that like even though Joe Abercrombie frequently references actual low-hanging fruits, he doesn't actually do the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, but book 2 of this series has a plus-size heroine, so there's that. Body positivity. Again, another criminal.
So which I have learned thanks to you, romances tend to be like the friend group or the sister group or whoever gets a book. So like how are these connected?
These are all those family of the Duke. There's the legitimate heir of the Duke, and then he had like 3 bastards from different women.
That are all like the factor.
Well, they're not related. I don't want to point this out that they're related because they're like wards kind of. So this Duke, who's a real son of a bitch, he had 1 legitimate heir who is the love interest in this. And then like 3 kind of wards. And then I think the boys are bastards, like they're related, but like they're whore sons. And then I think this girl is just a ward. And they all grew up together. And then the father was real sick and twisted. And he's just like, hey, if you want to be like the legitimate heir to his legitimate heir, you got to get rid of your competition. So you could choose to kill them or you could lose everything because fuck you. He's a real twisted guy. And then the
plot of Stardust by Neil Gaiman.
I've only seen the movie once a long time ago.
Like the king on his deathbed in Stardust is like, you know, by the time I was your age, I had killed all my brothers to be king. And he's like about to die and there's still like 4 of them alive. And he's like, okay, well, y'all got to kill each other because only one of you is going to be king. So good luck. Died.
Peace out. No, and then so it's kind of those kids. They escaped the murder spree. So the 2 boys and the girl escaped, and then they kind of went to Covent Garden and grew up to rule it. So now they're like the criminal masterminds of the London underworld. And this Duke is still around. Like the Duke kid grew up and is the Duke now, and he's still fucking shit up. And I'm sure there's like more to the story about like the attempted murders. Like maybe like they were botched on purpose so they could get away. I'm not sure, but like it's like a sketchy situation.
Yeah, I feel like I'm definitely gonna like this. Well, it's a very, very low bar, but I think I'm gonna like it better than Kings of the Wild.
I don't know. I was gonna read it anyway, and then I was like, "You should read this, Leanna." I kind of just talked to you.
Kind of how our book club works. We're like, I'm planning to read this, so picking that for you also having to read it.
I mean, that's how our first collab worked. Like, I was like, I think we went to like a book signing, and then we went to dinner, and I was like, "Hey, I got this idea. I'm gonna make you read romances, and I'll read grimdark." And that's how this all started. Way back in the day.
Basically, like you, who's always just like, Tessa Dare. Have I mentioned Tessa Dare? Oh, by the way, Tessa Dare. And he was just like, Joe Abercrombie. Have you heard of him? You and I were like, read each other's books. You will like it.
It's a remarkably accurate description of me.
And now we have both become each other's like fangirl, because then I'm like, Tessa Dare though, and you're like, nothing's as good as Abercrombie.
Although my favorite Abercrombie is no one's favorite Abercrombie, so like I don't know.
I feel like I've seen
your favorite Tessa Dare isn't everyone's best. Like no one likes that one best, so we both are kind of like the odd one in our.
I feel like that makes sense though, for like if like I don't mainly read romance, that like my sensibilities wouldn't align with someone who mainly reads romance when I am reading a romance series. Likewise, like you don't mainly read grimdark, so like your favorite in a grimdark wouldn't necessarily align with everyone else's favorite in a grimdark.
Mm-hmm. I like Red Country. I've been really into westerns this year, like Dress Ancient.
I feel like Red Country is the favorite of people who are like super into westerns, because I think it's like very extremely heavily inspired by the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood.
I love Unforgiven. I fucking love that movie.
Red Country is their favorite.
That I didn't put it together until now, but you said it's Unforgiven. I was like, fuck, it is Unforgiven.
Yeah, I think he said, because like I mean Abercrombie was a video editor before he was an author, and like so he does have a lot of film influence in his work. So I know that Best Served Cold was basically his take, and he was inspired by what's it called? It was a revenge story.
Like a lot of things. I can't narrow that down.
There's a specific one he named that he was just like, that's the movie that he was, dang it, I don't remember what it's called, but there's a specific revenge story that like that's a John Borman film. Well, anyway, specifically that. And then like Heroes was like inspired by, god damn it, I forgot the name of it. It's a specific war movie that's like about a battle.
I don't know. I was just gonna say like Sartre, who's a nihilist poet. Like that's what it's about. It's about nihilism.
It's basically 3 movies. So like there's like a revenge movie, there's a war movie, and there's a western movie. And so then he wrote Best Served Cold, Heroes, and Red Country.
I like.
You're welcome for the Abercrombie lesson for the day. I got you.
I see one comment that I want to bring up.
I will highlight it.
What are your tabs noting in the book for Kings of the Wyld? Because you have tabs. What do they note?
Oh, wait, I have to highlight this comment.
It's Megan Stover at 11:45 a.m. Does that help?
Oh,
in our chat.
Such great information. Oh, okay. She's not. Where did it go?
It shot up a little bit. There you go. What were your tabs noting?
Okay, so at 2 things. First, but I don't do this all the time, but I like to like break my book up, longer books, into like readable, like reading goal chunks. Because then whenever I looked at it, I'm just like, I can't finish that in one go, and then I never pick it up. So when it's something long like that, I'll break it out into like, these are my like reading goals. So like if I pick it up, I want to read by that marker. So I feel
I do that too.
But then when I started reading it and I hated it so much, then I started, as I got to my like checkpoints, I took out the marker and used it to tab atrocious lines for future reference when I was planning my rant review. So I tabbed the Gorgon, which
melon boobs.
Yes.
Like,
Shall we read together Melon Boobs?
Go ahead and educate the children.
Yes. So if anyone's doubting how male gazy this is, despite that, when she finally swept into the anteroom, Clay found her strikingly beautiful for a woman with a head full of snakes. The scales of her serpentine tail were the greenish gold of rain-washed copper, paling to cream at her throat and on the underside of her arms. She wore a tightly cinched bodice that proffered her breasts like melons at a market stall, but it was all Clay could do not to drown in her eyes, which were the red of bruised apples in the fickle lamplight. blah, 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 blah. She leaves to get a thing. I know the whole Gorgons turning men into stone thing is a myth, he said quietly, but I'm hard as a rock right now.
That was Matt Trick though, not Clay, because I will defend Clay. I liked him. Everyone likes Clay. Everyone in the book likes Clay. Clay's just a cool dude. Right. Everybody in that book likes Clay.
We haven't talked about this at all, but my true rage began at this point, and after that I hated everything else after it.
Oh,
and
I know.
Was the male gazy thing.
You texted me. You're like, wait till you get to the Gorgon. Wait till you get to the fucking Gorgon. Like, you were so angry.
Because it's so male gazy. But that's not where my rage began. My rage began with I thought I tabbed it. I was pretty sure I did. Oh yes, I did. That like goblety golem creature that they go to get their gold from, and he talks like
Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, like Jar Jar Binks mixed with a golem, and I wanted to die. And like, it's not just like a quick thing; it's like a whole chapter of that. And I was just like, "Are we doing this right now? Like, that's not funny." And it's like, I don't know who exactly would be insulted, but I feel insulted somehow. Like, what the actual fuck? Like, it's not. Oh my god. It's so painful. Oh God.
Yeah, it's a like again, it's just like whether or not you're bothered. I'm just like, yeah, I just moved on with my life. I saw problems and I was just like, you know.
I know that like
again, people are like that.
So you're not supposed to like expect depth of character or depth of world building or depth of storytelling or like anything. It's like, oh, it's a comedy, therefore anything goes. But I was so annoyed throughout by just like the constant throwing in of another magical creature that just exists in this world. And I'm like, how does this world function when everything that has ever been a magic thing is in here somehow? Like, it doesn't. I thought they
were kind of making fun of fantasies with that, though. It's just like, yep, another day, another chimera. Like, they're just like, you know, it's silly.
Which, like, again, because it had those serious moments, and I'm like, but then this is like a serious world with serious stakes. But also nothing could possibly make sense in this world because everything exists in this world. So I was just like,
Again, it didn't bother me. I was just like, all right, you know, like I just went with it.
Like, okay, so like the part where like, what's his name? He gets like a hat that they can pull food out of, like whole meals. And I was just like, immediately, I was just like, that like, the economy would completely crash if this was possible, and why doesn't everyone have that? And like world hunger wouldn't be a problem anymore because via magic you can just have food out of a hat. None of this makes any sense. And then
I don't think it's supposed to. Like, is food out of a hat ever supposed to make sense? Like, who wants to pull chickens out of a hat? Not like live chickens. They're pulling roasted chickens out of a hat. How do they cook the chickens in this hat? Like, nothing. Like, if you try to make it make sense, your brain's going to explode.
It very nearly did, but then I decided I didn't care. But also, like, in like around the same time, like there's the like magic-y like cure-all, which like when Clay lost
the drugs, I kind of like their like scene when they're like, oh, let's do drugs.
When Clay actually lost his hand, I was like, oh, like we did that, like okay, we actually like had some, and then he grew back because they had a magical cure-all, and I was just like.
Yeah, that like did lessen the stakes quite a bit, but I did like the fact that they threw like starfish, which is actually like scientifically accurate because they grow back limbs all the time. So they're like, yeah, there's like a dash of starfish in it, and like some other things, and like how they described it was like, I kind of like the description and how they would do it, because I was like, I bet you can grow a hand. Like, I bet you could grow a hand with the starfish parts. Like part of me was like into it.
I kept thinking of, so like throughout, I just kept thinking of other books that didn't do necessarily this whole thing, but like pieces of it where I had seen it done in a way that I liked. So like, obviously like grim, dark humor, I was like, Abercrombie, obviously I think it does it better. But like for specific things, like having every possible kind of magic thing in your world and have it still make sense. I was like, have I ever seen that done where I liked it? And like, we hate J.K. Rowling, but in Harry Potter, you get a lot of that where it's just like, oh, well, of course there was a witch, and like, and then there was this textbook about the vampires, and like, it's just like every possible magical thing. Somehow, presumably, you could assume if you like did your research at Hogwarts, you'd find out that pretty much everything exists. And then there are other jokes where like, I can't think of an example, but where like someone assumes a magical thing is possible, and they're like, well, of course that's not possible. That's just crazy talk. So like, I feel like J.K. Rowling actually handled that pretty well, where like, the tone of it is like this tongue-in-cheek middle grade. So like it's kind of funny to have Skelligro and like having magical cures, but then also having real stakes where you're like, not everything is fixable by magic, and like there are limits to this, and like so that's kind of what he was going for here with like everything's possible. And there are jokes like that, like, you know, like a magical tent that's bigger on the inside, you know, like having stuff like that, like you do in Harry Potter, but also enough depth of character to where you like can like sink your teeth into it. And what were we just talking about that I brought up that I hated so much? Oh, when you're talking about starfish.
Yeah, this hand going back.
This is more obscure, so I don't know if anyone will get this or have read this, know what I'm talking about. But Gail Carson Levine, who wrote Ella Enchanted, she also wrote a series of fractured fairy tales that are like really, really short. So there's like The Princess Test and Cinderella's and the Glass Hill and like The Fairy's Mistake. They're these really short fractured fairy tales. And like they have that kind of magical humor in it. So like in Cinderella's and the Glass Hill, he needs to grow something. So then he crumbles up a ruler, like to make something grow, because that's the magical logic of like, it'll make it longer because I crumbled up a ruler and put it into the magical powder. So like I've seen it done where you like have that kind of magical humor, and I like it because it's in keeping with like a whimsical fairy tale. But here it's American Pie, where we also have a starfish cure, and I hated it.
I just like starfish. I just like starfish.
Starfish, I'll allow it.
Comments. Leanna's favorite Test of Dare, I do believe, is the governess game.
I would, yes. I did really, really like When a Scott Ties the Knot too.
Everyone likes When a Scott Ties the Knot. That's like Disneyland. Everyone likes it.
I think When a Scott Ties the Knot is funnier, but I think overall, I think I still like Governess Game better, like as a book. But I think Scott Ties the Knot is the funniest.
Everyone likes When a Scott Ties the Knot the best. It's not my favorite though, but everyone likes it the best.
What is your favorite?
Duchess Steel.
Oh, is it? Okay. I know that like, that was one of your favorites, but
I like Follow Closely by Romancing the Duke. Those are my two faves, I think.
I did really like that too. I feel like Romancing the Duke is also funnier.
Yeah.
Excuse me, funnier than Governess Game, but I still like Governess Game like as a book. I feel like those earlier ones are again funnier, but I feel like with the Duchess Deal and Governess Game and the third one,
the Bride Bet. No, what is it? Wallflower Wager.
Yeah.
And then the Bride
I feel like
Bet
those ones like have characters that have a little more depth. Like the plots have a little more depth that I can like sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
We know that I give a massive shit about that. So
was the movie Point Blank though?
Yes, Point Blank. Wait, where is that? I'm sorry,
right, like 3 under this. Right after Test of Dare.
Yes, Point Blank. That's the movie that Best Served Cold is based off of. Now, someone please tell me the movie that I'm forgetting the name of the heroes is based off of.
I don't know. It's a Point. I know Point Break and I know Gross Point Blank, which are neither of these movies.
What? I don't know any of what you
Break
said.
With Keanu.
Oh, no, it's
they're surfing bank robbers. It's insane.
It's not that.
And then there's Gross Point Blank. It has John Cusack and he's a hitman.
Yeah, it's not that either. It's an older movie than either of those.
Okay, I don't know that movie.
It might be All Quiet on the Western Front that the heroes is based off of.
I'm really bad at watching things. You know that.
I know. Okay, so bit off topic, but have we read you've read Crescent City, right?
I have read Crescent City.
I have not. So take it away.
I don't think you ever are going to, because you got rid of all your Maz books. You're like, fuck this shit. I'm not doing this anymore. I actually liked it quite a bit. It's great if you like urban fantasy. Is it overly long? Yes. Like most urban fantasies you read, like let's just go for the best urban fantasy, Alona Andrews. Fight me. I think she's the best urban fantasy writer out there right now. Well, they is a husband-wife team. And those books get all of the emotional depth and all of the jokes in about 300 to 350 pages. Like they're brief and they get all of the impact you want. This is like 800 pages. Like it is overly long and overly complicated, but it still has those emotional depth moments and the funny moments that you would expect in a good urban fantasy. So if you're willing to invest the time into a book that's like really overly long, I think it's very good. I think it's more on par with Throne of Glass than it is with Akatar. Akatar, it has the sexiness of Akatar, but the badassery of Throne of Glass. Leanna hates everything I'm saying, but
because I was gonna, like, when you finished explaining it, I was gonna ask you, like, you know how I feel about Sarah J. Maas, like what I read before. So, like, knowing that, do you think I would like this better?
No.
And it sounds like no.
I wouldn't tell you to read this because I had you read Alona Andrews and you hated it, so I don't think you like urban fantasy.
Mara's convinced that I would like a different Alona Andrews better, and I haven't read that yet.
I don't want to put myself through that trauma of you hating it.
Because you found out about it on camera too. You were like, "That's a great book that I made you read, and how did you like it?" And I was like, "I hated it." You're like, "Excuse me."
Oh. And then you like the Tessa Dare book. Like, I was like, I don't understand you.
We learned a lot about each other.
We've been friends for a long time now, like 3 years, I'd say. It's a while.
I feel like it's simultaneously, I feel like we just met, and also like I've known you my whole life.
Oh.
Because I feel like if I think of it in terms of like knowing each other through BookTube, I'm like, oh, that's like barely like we just recently met, and I'm like, oh, actually, I've been doing this for a little while. But also, like, I just feel like I don't remember a time I didn't know you.
I just think we vibe well, like intellectually.
I like occasionally, like I remember because like the very first time that we met was at a Jay Kristoff signing.
It was,
and like you handed me a business card and everything.
I know. That was my like Capricorn rising because I've tried to describe astrology to you and I know it makes no sense, but like I
have so many world building questions when it comes to astrology.
I am an Aquarius, but I'm a Capricorn rising, which is a weird fucking combo, which makes sense if you've met me because I come across very Capricorn. You thought I was so put together. And then now that I
feel like my impression of you is like, because like you always have your hair down, but at that J. Kristoff signing, you had like this really tight, really combed back, really tight bun.
I did have a nice bun.
Glasses on, and like you just like your whole vibe was like totally different. And like after I met you and had that vibe, like
then you're like, oh, you're a crazy person. You're an Aquarius.
Like, very like I'm like binders. I was like, she has binders. And then like as I had your card, then I obviously like I went to your channel and like looked you up and like watched your videos. And you're like, hair's down, you're having wine, and I was just like, did I go to the right channel? Is this the person that I met?
That is the best way. See, this is how I can describe what a Capricorn rising is with an Aquarius sun sign. That is that. That's what that means.
Oh, you have binders?
Like you meet me and you're like, this bitch has binders. And then you get to know me and you're like, oh no, she's just a crazy person. Okay.
Like I feel like you have binders, but you neglect to use them.
Oh yeah, I have them. And then like you open it up and you're like, I have no understanding of how you organize this binder. It's just random things. And I'm like, no, it makes sense.
You're kind of Leslie Knope.
Let's see. Points in here.
Oh yeah, do you play D&D? I feel like you've used D&D references with me, and I like don't understand because I don't.
I have used D&D references with you a lot.
I've seen so many people talk about this in relation to D&D, and I'm just like.
I remember I tried to describe what chaotic neutral was because I am so chaotic neutral of a human. Like if you've met me, you're like, oh yeah, you're chaotic neutral.
But was like familiarity with D&D at all contributory to you enjoying this?
A bit, because there's a lot of like you know what? This is something I hadn't brought up yet. I was gonna say that this book, there's so many different side quests and like meandering storylines that it would work really well in a different medium. Like if this was like a tabletop game, if this was like a D&D game, and this was like a DM making this quest, it would be a dungeon master.
I was like, you are direct messaging somebody this plot? Why?
A dungeon master is the person who is like making the story that you are playing in.
Oh, okay. You're the one.
So like this would be a sick dungeon master. Like that would be dope. And it works really well if you're doing something that's more like multiplayer, and expansive, like online games or even D&D. Like I think it would work super well with all the side quests and everything. There's a lot of things you can roll a 20-sided dice for and see whether or not you're going to succeed. I think it would work really well. But when you're reading it as a novel, it kind of like loses momentum because you're going off in so many different directions all the time. So I think, like I was saying with Larkspur earlier, there's this whole character brought in who serves no purpose. Like you could delete the character from the book and the book would be the same.
Oh, but you'd have less tits, and no one wants that.
You would have 2 less boobs, and no one wants that.
She's
you should
there
have
as
blurbed
an
the book,
ornament.
Leanna. That was a perfect blurb.
Oh my God, I'm so mad. So fucking mad.
But like I thought that when I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this would work really well as like a D&D campaign. But having it be a book, it's kind of like meandering and it takes a lot of endurance. But if you're playing it, it doesn't feel as long because you're just like, oh yeah, there's all these things going on.
Yes, it definitely took endurance to get through this book.
I have just like out nerded myself to everyone in these comments. No one knew I was such a D&D person.
As previously mentioned, my treat to myself upon finishing was drinks Greta Van Fleet and reading 1-star reviews. And one of the 1-star reviews, I'm gonna paraphrase, but they ended their 1-star review by saying they're just like, because they were like similar to me, they were just like, is this, oh yeah, this is, oh no, I do not like this, and like this and this reasons. And they're like, that like kind of encapsulates it, was that it's implied that the main character once touched a mermaid, and he recalls this information while telling a bedtime story to his daughter. How enchanting. I was like,
I do remember that line briefly.
How
enchanting. Like,
just in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Like there's some strange things going on here. Let's see. I'm just looking at comments now. Some people are bringing up Circe by Madeline Miller.
Oh, I agree with this. I did want more of that. Was kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
And then
doorbell.
And then he was gone.
Yeah, that was just kind of there for a second. And never talked about again.
Yep.
Some people talked about that they mentioned Circe. They mentioned the 5th season because I know you put out that video today.
Oh, yes, the 5th season.
I read that.
Would have been even worse if I had read the 5th season, like in the midst of this. Oh, this would have been set afire. Like, oh my God.
Oh, someone else said, this is a while ago. Calbuto McFarland said, I'm more of a character reader. The DG types are, there you go. We just talked about how it being similar to D&D. I wish I saw that earlier.
Type? What's a DG type?
I don't know. I've drank too much wine.
I thought it was like, is that a D&D thing? I don't know what that means.
I can't think of the acronyms right now. Yeah, so you guys have said very funny things, and there's too many of them. Someone
thought, I think...
Oh, me?
I can't tell if they mean you or me. One of us gives off a D&D vibe.
I haven't played like with a group in a very long time. I would want to, but like I'm not really always welcomed at tables because nerd bros are a thing. We have discussed the topic of nerd bros, and those are like, you know how like typical jocks are very like exclusive and they like push people away who aren't similar to them. Nerd bros are very similar and they will push people away who are not similar to them. And nerd bros are a problem because I would love to play D&D, but I am not usually welcomed at tables. I should make an all-lady D&D league.
And strip it of all that disgusting misogyny and male gaze.
Melon boobs for everyone.
Oh, so upsetting.
But yeah, I would go on a campaign.
In case you're DG is Daniel Green, the YouTuber. It's not a
Oh,
D&D thing.
so I was like, I don't think it's a D&D thing. Is it? It's been a long time.
So far as I wouldn't be surprised that Daniel Green plays D&D, so it's a D&D thing in that way.
I can see him playing D&D.
But yeah, actually, like, because I know he has a video that's like, before you read Kings of the Wyld, and I didn't watch it before I started reading, but I watched it after I read like 100 pages, and I was like, what is it you think I need to know that would justify what I have just been subjected to? So I like started watching his video, and I was just like, disagree. Stop watching it.
Did someone say melon boobs for everyone? Yes, I did. I drank wine this morning. I don't drink in the morning for this reason because I start saying crazy things. But one of the characters in this book
melon boobs.
had melon boobs. They were described as boobs like melons. So melon boobs for everyone.
But also just, okay, so like, let's unpack that moment, because in addition to referring to female breasts as melons, he specifically said that the way they were cinched up and presented, it was like they were on offer at a market, as in available to you to like sample the wares. Like they're like out there for you. And it's like, it's just an example of like the woman's body. Once you have no clothing on, well, it's not yours anymore. It's up for sale. It's up for me to touch now because it's at the market.
I mean, as a person who's a bit top heavy, like everything makes my boobs up for serving. Like I can't like not have them be ginormous. So it's a matter of that. I don't know.
You're just putting them up for sale, Amanda. Don't you know?
They're there, so therefore they must be for you. Male gaze.
Exactly.
Melanie would join my D&D. We should make a ladies D&D night. It'll be fun.
You can teach me how to play.
It's literally math. You're just rolling a dice and seeing if things work. Like, oh, you are going to fight against this demigorgon, and then you have to roll a certain number on the dice to know if you're like,
whether or not you're going to get to see her boobs.
Well, demigorgon is a creature that will eat you, so there's no boobs involved. But anyway, there could be. You're right. There could be boobs. But in this case, like, oh, I want to throw this type of attack, and you throw a dice, and if you get a high enough number, your attack is successful or not successful.
Like, who determines how high the number has to be to determine whether or not
the dungeon master?
Successful? So you just like decide on the fly. You're like, roll. I don't think that's high enough.
No, there's usually like a campaign like printed out, and then dungeon masters can embellish from there.
Oh wow, that sounds like. I guess I see why.
Like if the demigorgon is a level like 15 in strength, to overpower it, you need to throw a 16 kind of thing.
So much effort. Oh my god. I don't know if I've ever told you how much I hate board games.
Well, this one doesn't actually have a board.
Yeah, but this is why I hate board games though. When there's like a manual of rules and pieces and like things and stuff, and I'm just like, no, thank you. Cards Against Humanity and Apples to Apples. That's it.
The same game, except one is R-rated. There was one in. Someone talked about Leo Carew in here. Let me try to find it. Someone said they read The Wolf and the Spider. Oh, Oana Maria Julio at 11:18 a.m. If that helps you. The Wolf and the Spider. I've read them this year. I don't appreciate them quite as much as Leanna does.
Wait, you read the Spider too? When did I miss that?
No, this is this person saying this.
Oh,
I've read The Wolf. I haven't read the Spider yet. But there's some interesting characters there, because I know Leo Carew like retweeted you and you freaked out.
Yeah.
But no, I read The Wolf and I enjoyed it. It's a very different book than Kings of the Wyld, though, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of liked it.
Good book.
I mean, it has very little at all in comparison, besides probably length. They're about the same length.
Yeah, but this felt way longer.
Yeah, like The Wolf, it's definitely much more serious. I think there might be a few jokes in there, but it's much more of a serious book.
I mean, even Abercrombie is funnier than The Wolf. The Wolf's not really about jokes.
Yeah, it's more about like plotting.
Yeah, and just in general, like the the like people, the Anakim, they're very like reserved, which I know you're a big fan of. Reserved stories.
Oh yes, reserved stories. I'm like, no, I need it punchy. It depends on the story though, because I've read some books like that aren't punchy. They are very reserved, but they work. Like I just read, it's too far away. The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, and that's a very reserved book. But I gave it 5 stars. I really liked it, so I think it just depends on the book.
That's fair.
And whether or not it works.
Comparison to Kings of the Wyld, or like, oh no, I was just gonna say that like I think the most shocking thing to me about it is that it was written so recently, because it really feels so dated, especially I mean the male gaziness, yes, that feels dated, but just in general the humor, not just the like sexist humor, all of it feels so dated.
Oh, someone else didn't like it. Bradford Knight said, being in bands for years and loving fantasy fiction, I was surprised that I did not like Kings of the Wyld. Someone agrees with you. 12, it's like the second one from the bottom.
I was like all the way back to the top.
There you go.
Yeah. I think in the comments, because I began my ranting journey in the vlog that I posted recently, because I was reading this while I was vlogging, and I think someone commented there saying that they didn't like it, and that they were told by someone when they didn't like it that like, well, you didn't like it because the humor is not meant for girls. She was just like, ha! You are correct.
The person better watch out. Like,
they're not wrong.
So many times in my life, remember Chappelle's show from back in the day, and the one episode with Wayne Brady where he's in the car and he turns real slow, he's like, is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch? Like, I feel like that often in my life, and that comment made me like, is Amanda Venture gonna have to choke a bitch?
Like that person, like I can tell that a person saying that is saying that because they think that's fine. They're saying that like, well, it's not supposed to be for you, it's really good. Whereas I think like, oh, you're correct, it is not meant for me. You're not wrong at all. And that is the problem with it. The fact that it's just for dudes.
I mean, yeah, I do feel like it's definitely more male oriented. It's just like, I thought it was kind of fun in general. I didn't take it very seriously. Does it have problems? Yes, but like, I just thought it was fun. Someone, Oana, like I mentioned before, she said that she likes Bellamus. I don't remember who Bellamus was in this. Who was Bellamus?
That's from The Wolf.
Oh, I was like, who's Bellamus in Kings of the Wyld? Was there a Bellamus?
Yeah, Kings of the Wyld would be so much better if it had Bellamus in it.
Okay. I was like, who is Bellamus in this book? I had a moment where I freaked out. Okay.
So that's kind of how you took it, right?
Yeah, I'm just like, I just went with the flow. I'm just like, yeah, it's fun. I didn't expect too much. I didn't take it very seriously. There's problems, but like overall, I thought the action was actually pretty fun.
I feel like the action could have been like, okay, so for me, like I can't just like action. I have to be invested in the characters involved in the action. So like, I feel like he did a decent job writing action scenes, except that I didn't care about the characters for one, and two, there was no stakes because I knew that even if somebody was in danger, seemingly in danger, they would be fine. Like no one would ever get hurt, and I never thought that they would. So I just couldn't care.
No, but like that's kind of like the end of Avengers, like Endgame, where like
okay, not all dudes.
Not all dudes, but in the end of Avengers Endgame, when they have like literally the entire Marvel universe there to fight Thanos, and it's like bananas, and a remarkably few number of main characters get hurt. Sorry, spoiler, we all know that Iron Man dies, but like it was just such a nerd boner for me. Like when like finally Captain America is so beat down and he goes, Avengers assemble, and it's just like raging nerd hard on. I don't care, I'm a woman, I still had a nerd boner. Yeah, it could have been better. It's just, I think it's fun. I think it's the best way to describe it. It's a fun book. It's not great. It's fun.
I wish that I had had fun.
But yeah, no, like there's certain moments that just work for me as a reader. And like, you know, those big moments where you're just like, they're down on their luck, but they're gonna like pull one last trick out, like in Avengers Assemble, like Captain Steve Rogers. You're just like, yes, nerd boners.
Like, I haven't seen Endgame, but at the same time, like, throughout.
What? God damn it, Leanna! I'm so upset with you.
But throughout the Marvel movies, they do actually. And I feel like people have pointed this out in terms of like what Marvel does right and what DC does wrong, is that Marvel actually has fleshed out the characters and made you care about them and given them depth and given them like emotional arcs to where you do feel like you're invested in them as people. They're not just like superheroes. So we're like Kings of the Wyld, again, like I could totally get behind the scrappy crew that's way over the hill, but they're gonna, God damn it, you know, knock one out of the park just one last time for Rose. Like I could totally be down with. That's why I picked it up, because I'm totally here for
why I like
that
it.
vibe.
I felt like it had that.
But see, I feel like this was like DC, where it was just like no depth.
I wasn't expecting a lot of depth, so I think it was that. It's just it didn't go into as many like emotionally resonating things as it could have. But in its basic form, it is about a bunch of guys who are a little over the hill, pulling out one last stop, one last trick they have up their sleeves in order to save Rose. So that's kind of what it's about. You can't say it's not about that.
Correct.
It's just like, does it do it well or not is the question, because it is about that.
It's technically about that. It's not about that. It's about cardboard cutouts doing that.
But it's still that. It's whether or not you think that it's good or not. But that's like the plot.
Ugh. Okay. Well, next month we'll definitely. It can't be worse. It can't be worse.
I don't understand your reading style. You might hate this or you might love it. I never know until you read it.
I honestly, I can't imagine that I would hate it worse than I hate Kings of the Wyld, because at the very least, I doubt it will be as male-gazy.
It is by a female author with the female lead character.
Although, I mean, again, because of internalized misogyny, that does not necessarily mean that it will not have those problems. But
I don't know. Both of these characters, they've been in the other books, but they've been very mysterious. So you don't even got to know them yet, and I'm excited about it.
Sorry, I was reading comments.
Oh, you just test read of which book?
I know, that's what I was just like, uh-oh. But I think
the first 5 pages of Daring and the Duke, or Kings of the Wyld?
The Rose one.
Oh, bloody! Oh, which book? Which book?
Person. Oh, that's not the one I meant.
Someone punched her husband now. What's that?
What book? You dished. We need context.
Yeah.
So that we can be angry about it. Oh, Kings of the Wyld.
Mm-hmm.
I approve.
I didn't mind it. I think that's where we are. It's just like, yeah, I'm like, I didn't mind it. That was fun. And you're just like, burn it with fire. That's the consensus.
Which again, I don't feel like I maybe end up being meh about next month's book. Like, that's a possibility, but I just very seriously doubt it will be a burn with fire type situation.
Fair. I mean, you are, between the both of us, I read a lot of fantasy, but I still consider you to be the expert between both of us. And then for like, you read a little bit of romance, but I think I'm probably the romance expert between the both of us.
I just look at you, the shelf is behind you.
I am by my Tessa Dare shelf.
I feel like the only romances that I have read very nearly have been all just because like you were like, here, read this. Like I've read Tessa Dare books because of you. I read Bringing Down the Duke from Book of the Month Club, but kind of because of you. I hated it. But like I picked it up because I had read Tessa Dare thanks to you, and I was like, this sounds like that.
It's
so
not.
I was like,
it's not. I would say, I don't know, it kind of has Elizabeth and Darcy vibes, but obviously not quite as good as Elizabeth and Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. So it has got kind of banter, I would say.
Oh, I did not like. And I read, this wasn't because of you, this was someone else I saw talk about someone else who was reading Tessa Dare. So therefore I was like, I can trust you because you like Tessa Dare. They read Edinburgh. And I was like, that sounds up my alley. And I liked that.
Okay.
But pretty much all the romance has been because of you. You're my
Yay. I mean, I read fantasy on my own, but I hadn't read like grown-up fantasies that you make me read.
Dark.
Anyway, let's start wrapping up because we've been going for almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, so Kings of the Wyld is massive thumbs down over here and a middling thumbs up over there. Is that fair?
It was all right. I give it a thumbs up. It was fun. I mean, it's not great, but it's fun. It doesn't bother me enough to burn it with fire. I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I had fun reading it. The action was cool.
Well, okay, I guess this is the test. Are you gonna keep your copy?
Yes.
Okay, so it's good enough.
Okay, we talked about this for a second before we went live. Like, we only came in here like 3 minutes before we went live. And I was saying, like, I was tempted to read the next book, Bloody Rose.
That's right.
But then I was just like, okay, considering how poorly he handled all of his female characters in book 1, reading book 2, where the main character is female, seems like a recipe for how is that gonna, it might be like hot garbage. I'm not sure, but like it makes me very like reticent to dive into that book because he hasn't handled women so far really well.
I've decided that as soon as this live show ends, which is like in the next minute, I'm gonna go look up 1-star reviews for Bloody Rose to see the situation.
To see the hot tea on it.
I feel like anyone who's actually reading it and reviewing it, they must have liked Kings of the Wyld at least enough to pick up Bloody Rose. So anyone giving it a 1-star, I feel like they may even be the opposite. They like love Kings of the Wyld and he handles women suddenly very well in the second book, and they're like, 1-star, what happened to the male gaze I was here for?
I don't know. Like, part of me was just like, oh, I want more of this action. I genuinely like the action. I'll say that. It was good just for nerd boners, like the end of Endgame, where it makes no sense, but it's like a big nerd boner. That's kind of how I felt about this. I like the big action scenes, the big battles. Like, it was fun to read. I like that kind of stuff. So going into book 2, I would be like, okay, maybe there's going to be more of that fun kind of questy battle stuff. But the main character is female, and he does not have a good track record with female characters, so I feel like it might be bad. Yeah, like I have low expectations. I might try to read 1 chapter at least and be like, how bad is it?
Well, I'll let you know what the 1-star reviews say, that I'm definitely going to go check out immediately.
You can text them to me.
I'm like, Mayday, Mayday, don't read it.
Abort.
Alrighty, so yeah, that's a massive yikes for me. I feel like I've done my ranting here, but I may film like an actual rant review to get deep dive into my rage.
Well, now you have like an opposite opinion as well to know like what other people thought, so you can like expound upon your, thoughts and be like, this is why I think this, even though other people said this is why it doesn't work for me. So I don't know.
General, my reviews are like, other people don't think what I think they're wrong.
Data. You have empirical data that no one can like cross-reference you on or say like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, yes, I do. I have a whole chat here and a whole video.
That's so cute that you think that people will be like, oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. You have your information and
I'm aware.
Opinion.
Nerd bros know no bounds. They will fight for anything.
I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I have boobs.
Well, actually, that's how
this book wasn't written for us, Amanda. We're girls.
I know.
Did you get that memo?
Take my melon boobs and leave. Anyway, next month. Daring and the Duke.
Yeah, I have it on Kindle, so I can't hold it up, but I've got it. I'm ready.
A very opposite book than this one.
And that live show will be on your channel.
Probably the last Saturday of the month.
Which I think is the 29th.
Could be.
I'm looking on my calendar.
I don't know when things are.
Well, that is the last Saturday of the month, so.
Then that's when it is, guys. Guess what?
29th.
Oh, the last comment here. Let's put that up on this should be our final comment.
Accurate.
I did technically give it 4 stars, so I think 4 stars is equivalent to 3 nerd boners. I'll take that math.
I'm thinking about what that math is.
You can't like put it.
How many stars are in a nerd boner?
I would say 4 stars of reading is like 3 nerd boners. Yeah.
So it's like 1.25 stars per nerd boner.
I don't know. There's no way to accurately like put this into scientific data. It's just like, how many boners do you think this represents?
D&D is math, so I'm doing it.
There's not enough blood left in my head, obviously, if I have that many boners.
All went to your melon boobs.
Boner. Anyway.
Alrighty, I think that'll do it. We said all there was to say about this.
I think that's a good note to end on.
All right. Well, check out Amanda's channel, everybody. She is fantastic. And again, she reads kind of everything. She's a lot better than I am about that. She reads all the things.
I read a lot of things.
Channel. And yeah, see ya around, people.
Bye. We'll see you guys next month.